Welcome to the NBA Coast to Coast podcast brought to you by thelines.com. Coming to you from the West Coast, Josh Lander, joined as always by Nate Weitzer on the East Coast. And we are looking at a Thursday night slate here, a little one with some back-to-back, some weirdness on it, 5-game slates. I don't want to say no bet Thursdays because we can still find some value here, but it's probably going to be a little bit of a weird night like it is sometimes on Thursdays when there's not as many games after a big slate on Wednesday. Either way, we've got this one and another game video up for you and our player props. So make sure to like and subscribe to that page and follow along with us. Also head to thelines.com. You can check out all of the great written content we have up there all season long as we head down the stretch of the NBA. And we have our odds finder tool up there. You can make sure you're getting the best odds available to you from all those U.S. sports books, giving you guys bets in the NBA this season. Nate, let's go ahead and get into this 5-game slate real quick and then talk about this Nets and Kings game.
Yeah, the Nuggets are minus 12.5 at Detroit. You know, anytime you have a small slate with something else going on like March Madness, Detroit gets to play. That is the NBA schedule makers trying to hide them. But I would not trust the Nuggets to cover against anyone unless maybe Mike Malone lit a fire under them. We'll talk about that later. Thunder plus 6.5 or 6, depending where you get it, at the Raptors, total of 231. We will talk about that game. Kings are on a back-to-back here after holding on for a close win in Chicago. They're in Brooklyn, and they're plus 3 as we speak. The spread has grown a little bit, 237 total. Pacers plus 14 at the Bucks, and then the Magic plus 7 at Suns. Orlando, another one of those teams they like to hide on these slates. Though the Kings, I mean, there's something really impressive in the water. I think it's just like a situation where you just want to take a team that takes no nights off and take advantage of the fact that they're now underdogs just because it's a back-to-back situation, but they've handled business on back-to-backs. Those games have been insanely high scoring, including the most recent one with Minnesota, a team that typically goes under, but they hit 270 with them. But I don't trust Brooklyn to score. I mean, not that I trust Minnesota's offense. I just have been on this fade Brooklyn train, and you saw them kind of come back to earth against OKC here. With Dinwiddie shooting 5 for 16 with 6 turnovers. And they shot 29% from 3, which is obviously going to be a barometer for a team that is now spread them out. And Chuck and then Mikal Bridges is doing everything for them. And if those aren't falling, that's going to be a big problem. They leaned on the fact that they got 34 free throw attempts, but that's the one thing that Sacramento limits. What Sacramento struggles with defensively is that high assist rate when you can spread them out and hit threes. Brooklyn has the 3rd lowest assist rate, though, with this new look team, right? And the dead last in terms of paint points, playing at the slowest pace. I have a hard time believing that they're going to score enough to get us to a 237 total. We talked about in the game video for Wednesday about all the Kings' notable road home splits and the fact that they're not necessarily going to get to what was a 237 total at Chicago. Now, the concern here is that Brooklyn's defense is far, far worse than Chicago's right now. With the new squad, 12 games here, they're 28th in rebounding rate, 26th in paint points allowed. Pretty good in terms of transition D, but 20th in opponents' three-point percentage. So, I mean, I'm not willing to say – I think I'm just going to shy away from the total as we stand right now and just say that there's value on the money line for the Kings, who are fighting tooth and nail to get the 2 spot here in the West. Memphis playing pretty well again. We know when Ja's coming back at least. And they haven't taken anything for granted because they are that young, hungry team. And you see other – more old hat teams like the Nuggets and the Celtics right now that they just can't get through a night in the NBA because they're just over it at this point, it seems. But Sacramento and Fox and Sabonis, I'm willing to lean on them, bringing it every night. And that includes on a back-to-back here.
So the thing is like, I'm actually a little bit more on the total because of being scared of the random Brooklyn win game. Now I should clarify too, like Brooklyn's been playing at a much faster pace since roughly their first 6 games with this new team. they were playing at a very slow pace in their first 5 or 6. I think it was really a matter of them not knowing how to play together, really that simple, because their defense has not gotten any better. Their offensive rating hasn't really gotten much better either. It's gotten better from their first like 6 games together, where it was pretty much dead last and they're scoring 101 points a game. But I think you have to look at who they were playing as well. I think it's a huge part of this Nets team in its current iteration. It's really about who they were playing, because even if you look at those first 6 games, definitely a combination of not playing well together yet, not knowing how to, but also who they were playing. They played the Sixers. That's a low, choppy, gross game, and the Sixers actually barely beat them in that game, because sometimes they sleepwalk through these easy ones. The Knicks beat the crap out of them twice, because that's what the Knicks wanted to do. They were pissed that they'd been losing to the Nets for like 4 straight seasons, so they've just been taking it out on them since they started playing them. And then the Heat, and then the Bulls. The Bulls dropped 131 on them, held them with 87 because the game was over by like the second quarter, but the Bulls are also the like 5th best defense in the league on the season right now. Make sure you check those stats. I promise you that's the case. We talked about that in that Kings and Bulls video, which is why we like that to go under. But then you look at the games that they played that do have a bit more scoring in them. It's like the Nuggets at home, the Timberwolves at home, the super fast-paced Bucks, who also didn't really seem to bring it until they had to come back in that game. The Bucks did against this Nets team to make sure that they handled business. Only won by 5 and didn't cover, but that game still had a 231 total, even with the Bucks being the best defense in the league right now. So then you look at the Thunder game; they just really didn't bring it. It was the second night that they were playing on the road like that, and really just. I don't know, the Thunder came out and actually took over in the third quarter. It was just sort of more of a weird affair. And the Thunder are a better team than this Nets team. My main point is like those games that are going way, way over are against teams like the Kings, right? Like they play faster pace and there's a little bit less defense and more offense. And then when you see them play against those teams like the 76ers and the Heat, it's not quite the same, right? It's a little bit slower. So I could see it going over. They limit fast break points is the other thing though. Like they're bad pretty much everywhere except for in transition and on the wing, because that's where all their good players are, is wing players who are big and long and rangy and can also get back on defense and be athletic guys that are tall and still defend the rim in transition. So like it makes sense that they're good at that, bad at everything else. If they were better at assists, they'd probably be better, but once again, they don't know how to play with each other, and who's their playmaker getting them those assists. So another reason that we faded the Nets is because who are they turning to down the stretch? Mikhail the Destroyer has done well. He's sort of rubbed it in our faces a bit here and there. He's also been pretty good in the clutch, but are you going to depend on that after we just watched De'Aaron Fox do what he did again? I think it's better to bet on the Kings in this one, but if you look at those Kings on no rest numbers, that's kind of my final thing. It's pretty absurd. It's a little bit skewed by the fact that they played that Clippers game on no rest, and that was the second highest scoring game in the history of the NBA. But even if you take that out, right, it's still like 126 points per game in their last 8 on no rest, and also allowing 126 in that time as well, 125 and a half, whatever. So like there you go with a 252 total on these Kings games when they're playing on no rest, where they're just draining threes, allowing threes. They're only playing at a 99 pace. They're just sort of lollygagging around and scoring at will is kind of how it's gone when they played on no rest. And I kind of believe in that, to be honest. I put some stock into that, along with the fact that I do think that this Nets team will be able to score on them, because the Kings aren't really going to play defense anywhere on the road right now.
And the Kings just played at a 104 pace in Chicago last night. It's really, the only thing that would give me pause is if they are like saying that was too close of a game. Fox continues to carry the load in the clutch, and he has a balky hamstring. Let's rest him. And then it's a completely different game, and the under is very much sitting pretty because Davion Mitchell is not a scorer, and he would be the one to step in here. But it's the same situation when we talked about the Bulls being like 2-5 in the clutch in their last 7, the Kings being the number 1 team on the road in the clutch, and Fox being that number 1 guy. Well, I mean, here's the new look Nets clutch numbers: 29th in offensive rating, 28th in net, 29th in rebounding rate. Somehow are 2-2, and you went through their game log in terms of who they're able to pop up and get. Of course the Sixers played them close. That's what the Sixers do. They try to get rest where they can. The Bucks, I believe, sat both Giannis and Drew for that game, and then the Nets sat everybody in some sort of weird I tank you tank move. And and then Denver, who knows what's going on there? Minnesota has been extremely inconsistent. And then you get a team like OKC, who's exactly like Sac, a young, hungry team that doesn't really take nights off, right now, and they just gave him the work. I just don't think that there's much talent on this Brooklyn team. Other teams know that, and some will try to use them as kind of a night off to a degree. But I think the Kings are not really going to play that. I think they're going to continue to bring it and probably win another road game.
Yeah, and I mean, I know I'm ending it with a disclaimer, but full disclaimer, this video is being recorded on Wednesday night, right? We just watched the end of that Kings game, and now we're talking about this next day, but we obviously don't have an injury report submitted for this team, so we don't necessarily know who's going to play. The only one we even have props for in this game is Mikal Bridges, and I do like it to go over, so I think we'll probably be talking about him some more in that player props video, but...
OKC, man, they got SGA back in the lineup, and he continues to kill it, to become almost a lock for all NBA in his last 4 since returning from injury. 35 points per game. The team is scoring 124 with a 122 offensive rating. Granted, 3 of the last 4 have been at home there in that span, and they're a notable road home team. They score 9 points per game fewer on the road. Pace is 2 possessions slower. Defense is a little bit worse on the road as well. I mean, Toronto, you don't really know what to do with. I mean, they've been so wonky. They went 1-4 on this road trip. They come home and they beat Denver. But, you know, we've talked in some other videos about what's going on there. That says more about Denver, I think. That snapped a streak of going under in 5 of their last 6 home games against the other conference here. They have also won 7 of their last 8 at home. Take that what you will. Pascal Siakam has notable home road splits, but not a good matchup for him. OKC has really limited power forwards lately. OKC's been, you know, surprisingly really good in a lot of the margins that the Raptors need, right? And you start with 3rd fewest points off turnovers allowed in their last 12 years, 4th fewest paint points. And then, you know, they're scoring in all the areas that you need to. For SGA, I mean, they have the 5th lowest assist rate. It's all about SGA though. They're 2nd in defensive rating overall in these last 7, winning 6 of them. He's been very efficient, again, going back to SGA, because that's what this all revolves around. In 4 games against the Raptors as a member of the Thunder, only getting 25 points per game because the usage rate has not been as astronomical as it is now. But we're talking about 52, 53, 93 splits in 4 meetings. He led OKC to a win in Toronto, a low scoring win, 110-109. The last time they played in Toronto. Early this season, it's a throw it out game in my mind. OKC scored 132 at home when Toronto's roster hadn't really gelled. Siakam had just gotten injured, and they just got rolled on the road. So you really look at Toronto as the 12 games since Jakob Poeltl got integrated here, and I mean, by the numbers, they're averaging 221. They're about even with their opponents. 95 pace. Opponents have the 5th best field goal percentage. They are denying free throws and second chance, but I think SGA is going to be able to operate in the mid range here, even with OG Anunoby on him, and Jalen Williams is emerged as a real great second option. Josh Giddey coming off a triple-double. Look, this Thunder squad is coming. And if you're going to give me +6 or plus odds on the money line, I will take that. They seem to relish in this role against the East. Won 6 of their last 7 there. Covered in 8 of their last 9. And I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but don't they just have the best record against the spread of anyone in the league this year? Or at least when they're underdogs, right?
I mean, definitely underdogs, definitely on the road as underdogs. And then in general, yeah, they're covering at a 62% clip on the season because they're one of the biggest surprises. I mean, you look at who's covering. It's either teams that are like really good, like Milwaukee, Philly, or teams that are surprising the shit out of everyone, like Utah, Sacramento, and some of those teams, right? Like those teams are also covering with the Thunder at that rate. So yeah, it makes total sense. This is that type of situation. I hate betting on Toronto. We talk about this. If you're seeds 7 through 14 in the East, I hate you, and I do not want to talk about you, but this is a 5-game slate, and this is a decent opportunity, I think, to talk about the Thunder covering. And I know the Raptors, like you said, have been very good at home and just not really as good on the road, just kind of up and down with a lot of down on the road. But I do think what's been happening in terms of for Oklahoma City, how they've been playing, the Raptor stats. Let's just call it Raptor stats. Like Raptor stats are points off of turnovers, fast break points, second chance points, and just other gritty, gross hustle stats that you can think of. That's how they win. This Thunder team, while that's kind of been their identity as well, because Shai Gilgeous is shooting 1.5 threes a game, I think, while he's getting like 60% of his points from the paint, as well as from the free throw line. And that's what we're talking about here, is they're getting a lot more free throw attempts. Toronto's just not doing much that impresses you at all in their last 7 games. And I guess it's tough because those are all on the road, but like they've just been playing on the road, right? Like what, they're 8 of their last 10 games away from home for this Raptors team. So like I don't really know what to do, considering that they haven't had many games since like basically right before the All-Star break was when they were playing like crappy teams at home and beating the crap out of them. So like I don't know what to do with that. And that's how they got themselves back into the play-in seed as well. But then you look at when they've been playing the teams that they were on the road, and those teams on the road were also, I mean, the Wizards are in there, but then you've got the Nuggets, Clippers, Lakers, and a Lakers team that maybe they should have beaten, but you know, the Lakers came back without even having a great game from AD. So that it's more just like when they play anybody that can give them any kind of like trouble down low, any kind of, because AD still had the like 16 rebounds or whatever. So it's like you're still giving up a lot to opposing big men, which isn't really where the Thunder are good, but they're all of their sort of like big wings, if you will, right? They're tall guys or shorter guys who are stocky and also playing and are long. I mean, Josh Giddey's like 6'10" for, you know, and rebounding like 8.5 boards in his last 15 games. So like, it's not a great matchup for the Raptors in that sense. And if I get 6.5 points or so, then I'm definitely just going to take that with the Thunder. And the way that this Raptors team can kind of just collapse down the stretch as well, maybe there's a little bit of a money line in there. And just for the record, I would take the over at 231 as well, even though the Raptors play a bit better at defense at home. Like they're just not able to stop exactly what I think the Thunder are going to be able to do in this one.
Yeah, I'm scared of the total. Yeah, I mean, just the way the numbers indicate that these teams would go over in this situation, but when they get together, it's kind of a weird herky-jerky situation, I feel like, a la SGA's game. But you said, yeah, the Raptors struggling to score down the stretch, and because what happens in the stretch, you know, no more transition game, right? It's playing the half court. We talked a lot about how they're either the worst or second worst half court offense in the NBA, and they're just not getting any free throw attempts here now since they basically added Pirtle. But if you want to look at the last few, maybe since Fred VanVleet made the most disparaging comments about officials in the last like 10 years, you're not going to get that many calls anymore. And he was able to will them to a win over Denver by hitting 8 of 12 from 3. But that's OKC, is going to be a little bit better, I think, guarding that line, guarding his position with the guys you mentioned. I don't trust Toronto. You said I don't want to bet on Toronto, but I will bet against them, I guess, or I will really just treat this more about the Thunder, which is exactly, you know, what I'm talking about with Sacramento. At this point in the season, I want to take young, hungry teams that are going to bring a consistent effort every night. And at least now with OKC, I mean, the franchise in years past, you didn't really know. But now we know when SGA is playing that they're going to give you an honest shake. They've won, 6 of the last 7 with him out there. They're 12-3 against the spread their last 15 road games. That's even a couple without him because Jalen Williams has turned into a star as well. So, I'm just going to try to lean on that and say I'll take them over the inconsistent team, even though they're on the road.
Yeah, I'm with it. Like, they've been playing well in the situations where you just count them out, and on the road, there's nowhere more than that. And Toronto has to win 2 games in a row now. I don't really trust them to do that either. So I'm totally with you, and that's where we're at. But Nate, let's go ahead and jump right into your first NBA player prop for tonight. The current favorite for MVP, who is sliding a little bit backwards, though.
Yeah, we're trying to follow this race, I guess. Just nailed it tonight with Embiid going for 38 and 18 in a win. Hope you hit some of those player performance doubles. But I think Jokic will have his day here on Thursday. Not that I don't think really cares or is gunning for that third straight MVP. I just think that he needs to start doing more offensively for Denver to snap out of this funk. And recently he has been scoring more, and he tends to score a lot more when he plays Eastern Conference teams. I don't know if it's a thing of like the familiarity of Western Conference teams. They chum out and blitz him, and then he has to do more creative things passing the ball. to get guys open versus some of the teams in the East. They'll just try to play him one-on-one and not realize that he has all those tricks and tips to get scoring down low. And that's why he's averaging. So we're looking at 26 points per game on a 29% usage rate, his last 8 versus the East, compared to 22 points per game, 25% usage last 8 versus the West. You look at his last 3 versus Detroit, it's about the same, just a little bit better, 31 points per game, 13 rebounds, and on 60% shooting, 31% usage rate. And by the way, the Nuggets have not covered in any of those. In fact, they lost one at home in just some weird stuff. But I think we're not really expecting Denver to cover 12 points. Jaden Ivey should be back here tonight to give the Pistons a little bit of a competitive roster. But we are talking about James Wiseman starting and trying to guard Jokic. James Wiseman, who probably belongs in the G League still at this point, who does not know what he's doing on defense at all. So we're 21.5 points for the Joker after he's topped this in 2 consecutive losses and tougher matchups than this, to say the least. Detroit is 29th in defensive rating, 29th in paint points allowed, and gives up the 5th most rebounds to centers as well. So if you want to take 12.5 rebounds or add the 2 together, I don't hate that, but I think the points are just particularly low given what we know about Jokic here.
Yeah, who's even playing for Detroit? Like, isn't just every person over 6'8" on that team sitting at this point, right? Like everybody's hurt or whatever they are. Yeah, the only thing you worry about is a blowout factor, but like, do you right now with Denver? Do you worry about it on the road? I mean, shoot, even at home, I don't know. The 21.5 points is low. We'll see what kind of state of mind Denver is in. Maybe the worst thing that could have happened to them down the stretch is that Memphis just falls apart and there's nobody really challenging them, even though the Kings are tied with Memphis in second right now. Yeah, you worry about the care factor, but like, come on, man, 21.5 for this guy. He should be getting that in his sleep. Hopefully he just comes out in the first quarter, gets 10, right? And like, we're like halfway there and we just finish it off in the third quarter, basically. And I think that's possible. So I'm going to go with Mikhail the Destroyer, the man, the myth, whatever you want to call him on Brooklyn right now. Definitely their option 1A and kind of B, honestly. 25.5 points in a game against the Kings that like, I kind of like over still. Just all those numbers we talk about in that game video sort of lead to that. And Mikhail, one of the things we talk about in the game video real quick is them figuring things out. So let's not take all 14 of the games that Mikhail has played. I actually did that in the game video. I split up Brooklyn's offense in the first 4 and the last 10. First 4 was atrocious, and Mikhail was getting his bearings, still averaging like 27, or I think it was like 21 in those first 4 games. But in his last 10, yeah, he's averaging 28 at this point, 28 and a half. Really insane efficiencies there with 61% from the field, nearly 50% from deep, and making 90% of his free throws. And then, honestly, even with that 28.5 in his last 10, there was a game where he played 10 minutes against Milwaukee. So you take that game out, and it's above 30 that he's scoring in those last 9, basically. And yeah, with that high total, both these teams playing at the top 5 fastest pace over their last 10 as well. And the Kings are allowing a lot of points to the opposing small forward, I guess is where we're putting Mikhail at this point. But definitely, like, in that range. And assists as well, which I wish Mikhail was getting a few more assists. This offense would probably look a lot better. He's not quite that type of playmaker yet, but I think you can stick with the points, feel good about that. I know you also like the steals there, and for him to get a couple of those against his team. So I'll let you tell us about that real quick.
Well, it's juicy as hell. It's plus 165 for him to get 2 steals. We're talking about one of the premier steal guys out there. I guess he's been concentrating a lot more on offense with the Nets, and even if I don't like over for the entire total for this game, I like over for Bridges, because that's exactly what we just saw is the Nets offense struggled mightily at OKC, but Mikhail still got 30 plus because he is, like you said, he's just the man. He's trying to score. The Kings, I think, are giving up a pretty high turnover rate lately. Fox just had 5 turnovers against that pressure Bulls defense. They allow the 5th most steals to shooting guards in their last 15. The way Sabonis plays, there's just opportunities to kind of read where he's going to go with the ball and for Mikhail to break on it. So I think that the plus odds there are definitely intriguing along with the points. I'll take an under here in the Raptors game. My guy, Spicy P, Pascal Siakam, has failed to hit 22 points in 7 straight games, averaging just 16 points per game in that span. His usage rate is dropping because the Raptors have gotten some other guys healthy, more integrated. and they're just not going to give Pascal so much usage if he can't hit.
Make a
he's
shot.
shooting 40% from the floor in that span and not connecting from deep either, 25% from out there. So that's when you look at an OKC team that's limiting paint points, fourth fewest down low. So, I mean, is he going to be able to beat them from the mid-range and from deep? I mean, not unless he knocks the rust off in a hurry. He does have really notable home road splits, I will say. He does average 26 at home since the new year started. But you look at it just his last three against pretty quality defenses. He's still shooting 25% from deep, averaging 4 assists per game. I would look at the under on the assists. 4.5 assists is plus 125. You can get a safer bet on the under 27.5 points in assists because I don't think he's really scoring that much, but the juice there is intriguing, or plus 120 for him to commit 3 turnovers. It's just there's numbers to back it up with OKC forcing the most turnovers to power forwards in their last 30 and allowing the 6th fewest assists. So just kind of a tough matchup for him to be a playmaker out of that role. And I think he stays kind of cold here tonight in a herky-jerky game.
Yeah, it's fair. Yeah, it could be pretty herky-jerky. I think it's going to be the reason I think there's going to be points is I think they're just going to both bludgeon each other, to be honest. But I think the problem for Pascal is that he if he's not making shots, he's not the matchup problem that you pay him to be. That's his skill. His number one attribute is versatility. He's either going to be stronger than you or he's going to be faster than you, depending on who you put on him. And Jalen Williams, got inserted into that starting lineup at power forward for the Thunder, roughly like 15-ish, 20 games ago. And at the beginning of the season and on the season as a whole, because it took them so long to start him, Thunder actually are giving up a bunch of points to power forwards on the season, like the 6th most. But you dumb that down to the last 15 games, that goes down to the 8th fewest that they're allowing, because Jalen Williams, my guy who I love, Jaelen, not the Jaylen one. That
Although
starts
the
at
other
7.
Jalen's a good defender too.
No, he is. He is. But
yeah.
Just to be clear, we're talking about Jay Will with the Alen. And now I'm going to talk about Jalen Williams and his props. Segue to him once more. 16.5 points. We love his defense, and we love what he can do, and we love that under for Pascal as a result. But he's actually gotten more than 17 points or more in 7 straight games, and 8 of his last 9 as well. In that sense, he's averaging 23.5 over those last 7, and 21.5 over his last 10. Either way, that's more than 16.5, right? So I think we feel pretty good about that one in this matchup. I do think he's going to have, obviously, Pascal, been a pretty decent defender, but still opportunities to score in transition and after getting rebounds and things of that nature with Jay Will. So it's not like he's just going to be in the half court waiting for, Pascal to match up with him. He's been doing all this without even that high of a usage rate, 22.5%, and that usage does drop when Shai Gilgeous comes back, which he did miss a few games there, and Jay Will went the hell off without him for 26 a game in 3 games that he was playing without SGA in that sense. So he's been shooting the ball really well, getting really good open looks because Josh Giddey's also been diming up a lot. So with that 139 individual offensive rating that he's had in his last 7 games, I feel good about him getting points in this one at a 231.5 total in that Raptors game.
Yeah, you love to see the confidence growing without SGA to be the top option for a minute and then, slide back into that secondary role, because does that mean, SGA sees OG Anunoby tonight and then Jalen Williams gets to operate against other guys instead of being that number one guy, but he still has the confidence of being a number one guy and now being the runner-up in the Rookie of the Year contest. It looks like, maybe if they started him all year, he would be, because he's an absolute stud, playing with incredible efficiency right now. 16.5 points at even odds seems kind of low. We'll see if that actually moves. If people if the odds makers realize that they're setting something that has been topped very, very consistently by this guy.
And maybe you just believe in that Raptors team more than Nate and I do. But God damn them if they screw us on this one. That is all the time we have for you in this one. Make sure to like and subscribe to that page. Continue to follow along. Check out the other couple videos we have up for you tonight as well. Until we see you next, happy betting.